We would like to share our story when God said no. A story of us wanting the miracle of physical healing, but God wanted the miracle of changed lives. On December 2015, we were grieving over the death of my mom. After 2 weeks, we were at the hospital as our firstborn daughter, Katie, was going through pain. She went through a series of tests to diagnose what was happening in her body. Exactly 4 years ago today, she was finally diagnosed with JMML after 2 months of being in the hospital here in Manila and in Singapore. It was a rare and aggressive form of cancer. We battled, we prayed, people prayed for us, and we gave our all. Then on March 31, 2016, during Resurrection Sunday, Katie went to be with Jesus.
There were days when I have visual memories of Katie's last moments. Our last I love yous before she was intubated, the last time I saw her eyes that spoke of life, and our last conversation. I told her how much I love her, and if ever after the procedure she is not able to see or hear me, she should shout Jesus as loud as she can, and Jesus will be there. In both funerals, her death brought a big number of people. We could not and did not want to miss the opportunity to talk about Jesus with the visitors.
Katie's death was the start of one of the darkest days of our lives as a married couple and as a family. We blamed each other for what has happened. We even questioned why God was silent and why He said no to getting Katie healed. The pain in our eyes reached the deepest corners of our hearts as we tried to rebuild our life. It was encouraging that her story reached thousands and changed lives, but at the end of each day, the truth is she will never be with us again. Death made me feel like a failure as a father to save his daughter, and a failure as a husband to support my wife. Our marriage came close to separation as the pain was too much to bear. Thoughts like maybe we weren't compatible, there is something wrong with our blood, and it's better that if we just start our lives anew. I had fits of anger, and it unfortunately got poured to my son, Ethan. Through processing the pain and death, he showed that what is life with him. Was I putting my confidence in what Jesus can do, or was I putting my confidence in who He is?
In my grief, I thought I needed to be by myself to find healing. But the more I focused on myself and my pain, I got deep in depression, causing physical manifestations of different kinds of sicknesses, from prediabetes, kidney stones, blurred vision, migraine, anemia, and even suffering from temporary Bell's palsy. I argued and felt tortured with the lies in my head. Wasn't my faith enough to make her well? I argued that I did not deserve her death. I argued that God could have stopped it from happening in the first place, and He could have intervened at any point before and through her illness. Why me? Why her? Why us? As I went through grief, I realized that I have been living a life that was so focused on myself and on what I deserved. Then, I made a decision to stop thinking of what I can get from the situation, and instead, to look at what God can give through us. When I started to make time for other people, my depression quickly turned around. It started with just one person at a time, to a family, then inviting more people through Courageous Light by visiting different hospital wards and sharing Jesus, then to communities, then to traveling weekly to regularly minister to a group of grieving and depressed individuals in the South, in Quezon City, and then to a much more bigger group. In the process of serving, I found the answers I was asking God. And now, God continues to open more opportunities to maximize our pain, to bring revival to more people who are grieving and depressed. And by God's grace alone, I had a general checkup, and for the very first time, my medical results were at the best it could be. In my pain, I am reminded that the Lord is faithful and that it is time to live out His purpose. We rejoice because it is not Katie nor ours, but God's story and purpose fulfilled to change lives. Her death was an opportunity to bring glory to God. Tears still come, but I don't know how to explain the wonderful joy I am filled with because of this pain. The peace and unshakable joy I have because of knowing who I am in Christ.
My wife suffered a deep depression, and how she got out of it was when she started serving and ministering to those who also lost someone or was undergoing depression. In my mind, I actually thought that getting involved with the same crowd would just drag you deeper into your own darkness. But in the dark, it was when God's light actually shined so bright. I saw a change in my wife, in how she would carry herself, talk to people, and how she prayed for them, in how she maximized her time to serve and share Jesus. She was my turning point in my own dark corner. I got drawn to her light and started to step out of my shell. I saw how selfish I was and started getting involved with fellow fathers and husbands who were also seeking God in the midst of their own loss and pain. In the midst of our pain, we served. That's when we discovered the only way that helped us to get out of our grief and depression. When we started to point people to Jesus, when we started to get involved in other people's lives, when we started to stand up for our own faith, when we started to discover that it was not about how much we loved God, but it was about how much God loved us. That is an overflowing and abundant. It was not about moving on, but rather moving forward. I love Katie, but I love God more. No matter how much I love my children, God will always love them more than I ever could. In our daughter's death, it changed us through and through. We were able to resolve family issues. It taught us to be bold and authentic about sharing Jesus to others, and we started maximizing our time and opportunities wherever we were to point people to Him. Does grief still come? Yes. The saddest still come? Yes. As Katie is forever part of us, we are also part of Christ. And knowing that she is content and happy in the presence of Jesus allows us to bask in the indescribable joy of serving and worshiping Jesus here on earth. We are just a mere door apart. People may remember our daughter as courageous Katie, a story that we thought could have had a better ending. But knowing now that Jesus is really enough, He alone sustains, and it is an honor to be part of His story until we see her again, when we are finally called home. So while we wait, we fall in love with Christ as we practice boldness to point people to Christ, to love Him for who He is rather than on what He can do for us, to live in gratitude because of how much love He has for us. And in this place of pain, we have complete rest and joy. Thank you, and may our pain bring you to fall in love with Jesus more than most.